The top 12 Dynasty rookie rankings is what we're going to go over on today's edition of the Audible. Also, Bloom, we're celebrating the release of the Bloom 100. It's tradition. It's like when the RSP comes out or when Dane Brugler's Beast comes out. The Bloom 100, it is here. And we're starting with your number one player on your list. It's Ashen Genty. It's not a surprise.
Not a surprise, but the real headline here is the gap is pretty big to anybody else. Okay. Again, Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, these are names that should be in your mind. And if you can trade up for 1-1, then you're probably not overpaying, even if it feels like overpaying. That's the kind of player you're getting. So this is exciting. This is going to be fun. And see, the other thing I'm noticing is in the draft circles, the big three of Ward, who's going to go number one, Hunter and Carter, Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, that are going to go probably 2 and 3, is really a big four, I think, in NFL circles. Genty is the fourth true blue chip player. Could we see him go fourth to the Patriots? Maybe. Could we see him go fifth to the Jaguars? Maybe. I think the Raiders is when folks thought he would be in play at 6, but I think that he is such an overwhelming prospect compared to the pack that teams might throw positional value out. Definitely going to be a top 10 pick, no lower than the Bears.
The team that has been in the most contact with him is Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
So let's keep that in mind
And the
as
Patriots might want to
every
trade
team
down.
has their pick right now.
Yeah.
What's the chances that happens a week from today?
0.
0%.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing 4 trades in the first round. Let's talk about Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
Now, he said he's rather retire than not play both sides. Okay, I'm not going to doubt Travis Hunter. A Chad Johnson-like prospect as a receiver. I've seen some people say like CD Lamb. I'm not going to put him that high. But obviously a freak, a unicorn, and a guy that, yeah, he's going to play both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and I think that he's the clear number 2 because he's the one other prospect other than Genty who could be a redraft first round pick. Like his upside is that high. Okay. Of course, there's complications. How much will he play in corner? I would say the odds-on favorite now is that he will go to Cleveland. And what's good about that is we're not talking about the Giants where he'd have to compete with Malik Neighbors for targets. So I do, and Cleveland needs the help on offenses. Dane Brugler from Northeast Ohio said, "Hey, the Browns have the worst scoring offense in the league, so they would be more inclined to use him on offense." And he's just that good. He's just that special of a player. Truly, we talk about generational players. This is maybe not only a generational player, but a player like in our lifetime that we haven't seen. And if you play fantasy football and you pass on a player that is a once in a lifetime player, what are you doing? So he's falling to 5, 6, 7 in these early rookie drafts. He should be number 2.
He should be number 2, and behind him, I guess, great debate, although I don't participate in those type of debates because Tedarrell McMillan is my number 1 receiver in this class. Again, Travis Hunter, what is he? How much is he going to play? Whatever. Outside of Trav, Tedarrell McMillan is there, and I've used the name Shades of Mike Evans. Get as offended as you like. There's some Drake London, Michael Pittman to his game, what have you. But I'm a fan. I really like Tedarrell McMillan, and he's number 3 on your list.
Yeah, and he is no lower than number 2 in this class at wide receivers. And you're right to point out those players like in the classic Matt Waldman axis, the archetype. He doesn't have the physical edge that Mike Evans has. Okay. I don't think that he can truly play inside and outside like Drake London. I don't think that he can truly be a big slot. T. Higgins is another name, Cease. I mean, I think T. Higgins is a good name to say if everything goes well, that's the kind of player McMillan can be. Maybe not quite as dominant at the catch point, but has more to offer after the catch than Higgins. But what's Higgins for fantasy? I mean, a 3rd round pick. What would he be if he doesn't end up with Joe Burrow? What would T. Higgins be? You mentioned Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman's a worst case scenario because of how poor the passing offense is when Joe Flacco's not there for the Colts or Gardner Minshew. But the point is that, so what does that translate to in terms of long-term value? I'm not sure. And the other reality, Cease, is, not even in the top 12 is someone like Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins and Tedarrell McMillan are similar kinds of receivers, right? And if McMillan lands with, say, the Panthers, right, and Higgins lands with the Patriots in the early second round, now your fantasy value is pretty close. So what I'm really getting at is whatever you think about McMillan, the drop off, you're the number 3 pick in rookie drafts. He's going to be the number 2 or number 3 pick in rookie drafts. It's not worth as much as it has been in years past. You're going to be looking to trade down.
Luther Burden is a player you're going to be looking to next, and where he doesn't have the length, if we're dinging prospects in this time of year, it's like, okay, well, the wingspan isn't there, but strength, run after the catch, speed, acceleration, like these are all there with Luther Burden, who's behind McMillan on your rankings.
Yeah, and look, at this point, when we're going to go all the way through 12, 4 through 12, you could put them in just about any order, and they're going to get shaken up by draft capital and landing spot. I'm not going to argue with you. That's how level. So again, you want to be at the end of the first round, or even better in the early second round, because really this tier of players extends into the second round. There are players we're not going to talk about on the show, like Jack Besh, like I mentioned, Jaden Higgins, his teammate Jaylen Noel, that we're not going to talk about in the top 12. That you could put them in the top 12, and depending on landing spot, we may end up putting them in the top 12 after the draft. But Luther Burden is an offensive weapon. He's in the Deebo Samuel mold, but also there could be more to work with downfield than we've seen with Deebo Samuel as a route runner. It's just one of those, he hasn't done it as much. It doesn't mean he can't do it. But at the same time, what if Deebo Samuel was not on the 49ers, who really crafted a Deebo Samuel shaped role for him? It's hard to say. See, one of the teams I keep seeing Luther Burden mock to is the Buffalo Bills. Would that be good or bad? I feel like for fantasy, that wouldn't be great.
Yeah, it's the Bills. They need a bit more creativity there. We'll see if they would do that, because you mentioned, what would you see with Debo if he wasn't with Kyle? People might say, "Oh, this sluggish receiver we've got," right?
Right,
It's all about
right.
fit, and
That's the
it's all about
thing.
how you craft the fit for a player.
Yeah, so that's, again, when we look at this tier in the mid to late first round, more questions than answers, some talent, but we're not really sure what the range of outcomes is for these guys.
Okay, let's talk about Emeka Egbuka. And if you don't have Tedero McMillan as your number one receiver, a lot of people have Egbuka as the number one receiver for good reason, Bloom.
Yeah, and Egbuka is more of a known quantity than Burden. He's a slot outside, um, rugged. Maybe you'll see some Amon-Ra St. Brown comparisons. I don't know that he's going to be truly the focus of a pass offense the way that St. Brown was, but he's a high floor player, a great blocker. So, when you see Egbuka is probably going to go against Burden, that might not be the best way to rate them for fantasy, because Egbuka is going to give you blocking, which some teams are really going to value from their slot. And other teams that might not value that as much and want more playmaking may have Burden ahead. And that's what we care about more for fantasy. But, again, is he an exciting, and could he be like Jordan Addison? I mean, what's the upside here? I don't know that Egbuka is going to be someone that's really going to change the fate of your fantasy team. And we're already only at number 5. And then we get to the running backs. And I think a lot of people are going to have the running backs ahead, but I think some of these guys are also going to end up at somewhat disappointing landing spots. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's start with Trevion Henderson there. Omarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Quinshon
Right.
Judkins. Let's do them as a group,
Sure.
Sigmund, because, well, they could all land with the Broncos.
Right.
And again, it's fit. With Trevion Henderson, he is a Jamal Charles-like prospect. With Omarion Hampton, think Javonte Williams pre-injury with better vision. Caleb Johnson is DeMarco Murray. In my opinion, Quinshon Judkins has power, has more speed than you would think. He's a blanky the blanker who doesn't shy
Yeah.
away from contact. He arrives with violent intention. So this cluster of backs, again, they could be higher than that cluster of receivers we just talked about. But Henderson, Hampton, Johnson, Judkins, all right there, late first, early second round in the regular draft. And then in your dynasty drafts, you're thinking, all right, where are they going to go? Where they go is going to really matter and establish the order of these 4.
Right. And that's the thing, in Dane Brugler's last 7-round mock draft, I think Trevion Henderson falls to the early second to the Bears. What do we think about that? I mean, that's good. He's not Jahmyr Gibbs, okay? Jerick McKinnon. Remember, before his injuries, Jerick McKinnon was tabbed as a feature back. So I'm putting Henderson first because he has big playability, because he has passing down ability, but we're still looking at all these guys at least possibly are going to be in committees. And I mentioned Jahmyr Gibbs, and I keep bringing this up, Cease. I think Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery and Ben Johnson, that's the new model for the backfield. Okay. Now, Marion Hampton, I think people are picturing as a true lead back, but he could be a David Montgomery type back. And honestly, he didn't stand out as the clear number 2 back the way that he might be the clear number 2 back when we look at draft capital. But he is the one that Denver could take, the Chargers could take, and he could end up driving a run first offense. Caleb Johnson is someone that if he's in a zone scheme, he's as good as these prospects, and he should be in a zone scheme because it's just so apparent and obvious that that's where he belongs. But, in Dane Brugler's latest mock draft, he went to the Giants. So some of these backs are going to end up at spots where and then we have Judkins. I know that the Bengals had him and Henderson in. Judkins might be the one I like the best in a vacuum, Cease, because of, like you said, the violent, bad intentions and some of the extra added athleticism. When you combine athleticism and bad intentions, that is a good NFL running back. But Cease, do you disagree with before the draft having this 4 tightly packed?
Yeah, no, they should be tightly packed because that's just the way it is with these backs and so many different opinions. If we go back to January, now I've had O'Marion Hampton as my number 2 back behind Ashen Genty, but I only have one that has a first round grade.
Right.
Hampton does not. But I've had that since January, and it became kind of trendy for Hampton to oh, guys, I got a back for you. Because if we go back to January, Caleb Johnson was everybody's number 2 back. And while I like Caleb Johnson, I like Hampton a bit more. We are hearing some things now of people think there's not much difference between Genty and Hampton.
No, there's a big difference.
Go ahead and think that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, LaDainian Tomlinson. Nah.
Right, remember
we don't need that
LaDainian
guy.
Tomlinson and Michael Bennett? Not much of a yeah.
Right,
There's a difference.
right, yeah. There's a difference. So there, and with Travion and Judkins, it's basically Chad Ryder, our good friend from NFL Network, said it's a go get your guy draft.
Yeah.
What it also is a buffet. So do you want the Henderson, who's the smaller back but big playability? Do you want Hampton, who can do a bit of everything? Do you want Johnson, who's a hammer? Judkins, who's a hammer with more speed? Just kind of different styles. Judkins will stay lower. Johnson has a very smooth gait and a guy that can just charge, and it looks like he's not running fast, and he is running fast. So it's almost beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Sure.
With these 4 running backs, and we're going to see how the teams shake them out there. And Hampton at 20 at the Broncos seems to be everybody's default if they don't move up for Genty.
Yeah, and then that would put Hampton number 2 in rookie drafts because people would expect it. And I mean, we'll talk more about that. Remember, after the draft, you got our 8 divisional previews, one of the great, reviews of the draft, one of our great traditions here. Speaking of traditions, so yeah, this is again though. I think the overarching picture folks should be getting is we're going to give you 12 and rank them 1 to 12, but what we actually do in our rookie drafts is very much to be determined.
Let's talk about Cam Ward. Next on your list here, number 10 on your list as we go over the Bloom 100 top 12 Dynasty rookie rankings. Ward is there. He's a little too playground for me if we're talking NFL. But what do we know with fantasy football? You can run, check.
Right.
Got a big arm, check. Right? If you're a playmaker, check. You can be a top 10 fantasy quarterback right now without being a developed passer.
Right.
Because Ward goes off platform way too much for my liking. My number 1 quarterback is a player that we're not going to talk about in your top 12, Shedeur Sanders. Sanders is a developed passer, but it all goes to fit. Sanders can't run, or, he can run very little. Ward runs a lot, throws great deep passes, short and intermediate. It's not great, Bob.
Yeah.
But, we're talking about fantasy. It's much different. Cam Ward is your number 10 player.
Right. And number 2 in Superflex, by the way. And for fantasy, just think Kyler Murray. And that's a reasonable comparison. I think Ward can be a better passer than Kyler Murray, but playing style, Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray hasn't broken into that top 3, top 4, although for a little bit we thought he might. And he's still a quarterback 1, even though it can be a roller coaster ride. So that's what Cam Ward offers. And So there's actually for fantasy a pretty high floor here. We see where Caleb Williams was going in rookie drafts last year. Think about that's about where Cam Ward should go. But Cease, very much speak about in short order within a year or two. Cam Ward might not be the best fantasy quarterback in this draft, and it's not going to be Shedeur Sanders. On Sanders, really quick, Cease. I think it's reasonable that he might have the best NFL outcome, but the players he's compared to, Geno Smith, Teddy Bridgewater, Andy Dalton, not exactly exciting for fantasy football.
Yeah, so that next fantasy quarterback that you may want is actually Jaylen Milroe,
Yeah,
who is, I'm not going to say fast riser. We're almost at the end of the ridiculousness because we're a week away from the NFL draft. And the ridiculous that we get, after combine, before basically now. Now you're actually hearing some real information,
yeah,
by the way. So Jaylen Milroe is there. I'm not going to say fast riser because if you already knew the work ethic
yeah.
this kid had, the time that he put in as a passer. Now he's raw and he's got work to do, but Jaylen Milroe is next on your list.
Yeah, and what people may not understand about Jaylen Milroe is if we're talking about running talent, and which translates to production, the most important production, which upbridge rebar with the Konami code. If we're talking about rushing ability, running ability, there's one quarterback better in the NFL right now. It's Lamar Jackson. And that's maybe debatable. Maybe. Okay. So Jaylen Milroe, absolutely. Jetpack Galileo, who I love, who's one of the best football minds out there, says running back two. Sees every time he brings up Jaylen Milroe, he's like, that's running back two in this class. I mean, he's not really running back two. He's certainly, if he flames out as a passer, there's potential there for him as an NFL running back. He's that good as a runner. He's that natural. He's that athletic as a runner. Okay. But he is also a very good deep passer. He is also very good against pressure. Uh, the thing about Milroe is that you've had this roller coaster ride where some of the games this year, he looked like the number one overall pick. Jane Brugler talked about this. Thor Nystrom talked about this. But it sounds like there might have been a square peg, round hole fit with his offense approach. Last year, Tommy Rees did not have that approach 2 years ago. That's who, by the way, the offensive coordinator is for the Cleveland Browns. So, but bottom line, fantasy potential through the roof. Jaylen Milroe actually a higher ceiling than Cam Ward for fantasy. And I think Matt Waldman favored also Jaylen Milroe, by the way. I think if your team takes Milroe, you should be very excited.
First tight end we're going to talk about is actually tight end 5 in the rookie scouting portfolio, but a lot of people saying they're the best tight end in this class. And it's a great class, but the first tight end is at 12, the last player we're going to talk about. And he's Tyler Warren. And it's really like, what do you want him to be? I've called him an OW because I personally think Colston Loveland is the best tight end.
Right.
We're getting technical. It's all about semantics, but the best tight end is Colston Loveland. The best whatever you want him to be could certainly be Tyler Warren, who Colts, I think it's funny again,
Yeah.
the ridiculous moment where the Colts are putting it out there via various channels of like, we're not going to take Tyler Warren. They're totally going to
They
take
want
Tyler
Tyler
Warren.
Warren. Well, because someone might take him before them. The Jets,
Exactly.
the
Right.
Panthers,
Right. What? Tyler Warren? We don't want that
Who
guy.
said that we
Please.
wanted Tyler Warren?
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's ridiculousness.
Yeah, and the Colts may end up with Loveland instead. And like you said, actually Loveland, even though Warren is a more rugged player, Loveland is probably the better blocker. What Warren offers that's interesting, and Loveland would be number 13, okay? Warren could be Taysom Hill with better receiving chops. But he's a middle class TJ Hawkinson for receiving, and then you might add short yardage. He's actually very good. So that's exciting. And if he gets drafted somewhere, not the Colts because of the passing game, but if he goes to the Jets or the Panthers and they say he's our short yardage running back, well, now I'm going to move him up. I may move him up into the top 5, but I don't think he's going to get in nearly sniff that Bowers McBride tier for fantasy. And I don't think Loveland either. Todd Heap is a name I've seen thrown out there for Loveland. I think that's fair. Todd Heap was a good fantasy tight end, but not a game changer for your fantasy team. So again, you can see, but it's pretty level. Someone said, I'm taking Tyler Warren 5th or 6th. I'm not going to say you're crazy right now. We'll see how it all shakes out in just 1 week, Cecil.
1 week from today, and your draft special, Bloom.
Yeah,
Let's preview that for everybody because you and Matt Waldman talking about the draft for 4 hours. It's
yeah,
awesome.
and Bob Harris is going to join us for most of the night. Joe Bryant is going to be here throwing out the first pitch. Paul Perkese always with us for the first hour, Saturday to Sunday. Just did a spot with him. We've got the Dynasty team, Alfredo Brown, Dave Kluge, and Jeff Bell. They're all going to be joining us, and then Matt Batanti. We're going to ride into the sunset with Matt Batanti, get some good offensive line takes and just some fun. Because it's fun to hang out with your friends. It's fun to think and talk about football. It's fun to think about new beginnings. Everything is possible when it comes to the draft.
Thank you for being my friends. He
Thank you
is
for
Sigmund
being
Bloom.
a friend.
You follow him on social networking at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible, saying watch the videos that may or may not pop up here. Stay tuned. And as always, please stay frosty.